Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about the heat dump attack and other things. But I'll start with an article I just saw. The Chicago Sun-Times has printed your summer reading list, which consists of books that don't exist because the guy just made it with AI. So that's a good one. And if people keep doing this, and he even says, I use AI all the time, but I always check it, but I didn't check that one. And now people are calling me, and I guess they're going to be calling me for a while.
Does he still have his job?
Well, apparently he's responsible for that whole section, so I imagine firing him is probably not an option. But yeah, it's about time people get fired for this, you know?
Yeah, yeah, be held accountable.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
likewise, the story is, have you been hearing on X how the Holocaust is now a big hoax?
No, I heard that for a day or so, if you asked it any question, it would tell you about white genocide in South Africa. And then they turned that off. So now it'll tell you the Holocaust is a hoax. Well, that's what Elon Musk's original plan was, that it would only give you the stuff he believes, which is pretty
Yeah.
much alt-right conspiracy theory crap. And every time it repeats the truth, he gets really mad. And so people add to the fundamental prompt, tell them why about white genocide, and they phrased it badly. So it just told everybody about white genocide. You'd ask, like, why did this baseball player get fired? And it would say, let's hear about white genocide in South Africa.
Yeah, and Sam, have you looked into the white genocide in South Africa?
No, I've just seen various articles that claim that it's completely nonsense. I have no idea.
Well, like a lot of conspiracy theories, there is a thread of truth to it. But it's over a longer duration of period. It's not something that's a massive thing that's going on right now.
Are there people actually getting killed, or are they just like having their land seized?
Well, like in, Oakland, or other big cities, yes, people do to get killed, but is it directly related to that or is it being morphed into that?
Yeah.
So, it's made to think like, oh, this is a big catastrophe. People are leaving South Africa immediately. And no, that's not really what the case is.
Well, I guess a few dozen have come to America now.
Yeah, yeah, a few dozen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So, again, you got to look into this. All right.
yeah. Well,
So I'm going to go to the library with that reading list and see how
okay.
many books I can get.
Yeah, they sound pretty good too. They're like they sound like exciting, great books to read. Anyway, this one's great. You know, Kristi Noem is going to run the Hunger Games. She's going to make a reality TV show where immigrants compete for citizenship.
Oh, this sounds fun.
I know. And
Is this
if you win, you become a citizen.
this sounds like cage fighting.
Well, you know, it just like that junk with XAI and Elon Musk. I feel like this was carefully crafted to appeal to Donald Trump. You know, I don't know where I get that.
Yeah.
And RFK Jr. has decided not only is fluoride bad for you, so two states so far, Florida and Utah, have banned fluoride in water. He's now banning fluoride supplements for children, which is interesting. I didn't know there was something called prescription fluoride supplements for children. And I looked online, and there's like over-the-counter fluoride supplements. You can buy them.
Hmm.
So I don't know what the deal is with that, but anyway, they're trying to ban the supplements too. Because
Well,
there was a debunked study that claimed that high levels of fluoride lowered your IQ. So he's convinced that fluoride is poison. So,
yeah, all right. So
yeah.
we have conclusive evidence that fluoride does strengthen teeth
Yes.
and does reduce cavities. There's no question about that.
Yeah. And the article I read said the way it works is it uh, increases your ability to regrow the enamel. But what RFK Jr. thinks it does is kill the bacteria on your teeth, and therefore it kills the bacteria in your gut and weakens you. But
Well,
apparently
wait,
it's not what it
wait,
does.
wait, 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 wait. You want the bacteria on your teeth to be killed. That's why you brush your teeth.
Well, I'm sure you do, but that's not how fluoride works.
No,
Fluoride,
no, I
that's
understand.
that's right. But
But
you
if
don't want the bacteria in your gut to be killed, and that's why they say,
no,
you know, just taking antibiotics all the time is not good for you.
Right.
So that's his logic, is that since it's a disinfectant killing bacteria in your teeth, it must be messing up your guts too, which is
Yeah,
all
right.
garbage as usual.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
right. So China is assembling a supercomputer in space. This is hard to understand, but they're going to send 2,800 satellites up. They already sent up the first 10. They're going to be solar powered, and they're going to have fast point-to-point transmissions and make a distributed supercomputer in space. The part I don't really understand is why you would do this. How can this possibly be cost effective? But they're doing it.
Hmm.
And they say other nations might want to do it too. I assume there must be some reason other they say you can get cheap solar power up there. And I said, well, yes, you can, but it's not cheap enough to justify the cost of launching a satellite up there.
Yeah, is are we still talking about $10,000 a pound?
I don't know, but it's
Okay.
hard to believe that it can possibly be justified to put
Right.
a supercomputer up in space. I wonder if it has some secret hidden military purpose or something.
Oh
Anyway,
no, that wouldn't be the case, would
well,
it?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to understand what the point of it would be. But I was charmed by this one. CERN has a problem because they generate antimatter by particle collisions, and therefore it's generated in a region of highly intense and alternating magnetic fields. And if you want to study antimatter, you want it in a better environment. So they want to make a container and move the antimatter, which is the thing you see on Star Trek all the time. And
Right.
it's not easy to make a container to move antimatter, but they made it. It's 6 feet across. You stick it on a truck. They drove it like 100 miles at a maximum speed of 40 miles per hour with just protons in it this time to see if it could withstand the stress and motion and bumpiness of the roads. And it was able. The only problem is you can only move it like 100 kilometers or something before the liquid helium all boils off. And but that's easily fixed. I used to transport liquid helium 700 miles for my thesis. You just carry along another dewar of liquid helium. So anyway, it does work. Their prototype testing it with protons worked. It didn't lose any of the protons. So they're pretty soon they'll be able to move antiprotons in that thing.
Hmm.
It's trapped, of course, in intense magnetic fields created by superconducting coils that are cooled with liquid helium. Just what you'd figure. So
That's interesting.
yeah, I know it's a step forward in like the progress moving into like science fiction, where you actually have like a jar of antimatter you're carrying around.
Yeah. Do you know what they plan on doing? What the goal is?
The goal is to have antimatter that can then study the reactions of
Yeah.
antimatter
Okay.
in like a
Okay.
controlled environment that's not subject to the crazy nonsense of the particle accelerator that made it. Yeah, I can think
Oh,
of
I
studies.
see.
Yeah, but I
So,
mean,
so they want to isolate it from the accelerator where the
right.
strong yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah,
Strong magnetic
then they
fields
can
are.
study the antimatter particles and see what they do. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a couple more like that. There's a hidden ocean 700 kilometers below the Earth's surface with more water than all the oceans on the surface, three times as much total water. But what it is it's inside a rock. There's a rock called ringwoodite, which at high pressure can hold incredible amounts of water at a molecular level. And this makes people think there's been a theory for a while that the water on Earth came from like a comet that crashed into Earth.
Yeah,
But now
right.
they're thinking maybe it came from this. There's apparently really a ton of water inside the Earth. And by the way, I think I read they're speculating there's also a ton of water inside Mars. It's just probably not going to be easy to get. You'd have to dig a
Yeah,
whole lot of
right.
crust, and but it's
Huh.
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting,
Well,
huh?
there's one I thought was even more interesting.
Okay.
There's supposedly a bunch of hydrogen inside the Earth that you could pump out. And unlike natural gas, if you burned the hydrogen, that really would be carbon free. And they claim there's enough there for clean power for 170,000 years. And so some scientists have determined what geological formations would be needed to hold that hydrogen. And they have formed a corporation called Snowfox Discovery exploring, trying to find that hydrogen and drill for it. So if they can actually drill and find hydrogen reserves, that would be an awesome clean energy solution.
So, Sam, is it gaseous
I
form,
think
or do
so.
we know?
Oh, I think so. They're claiming there's a whole bunch of gaseous hydrogen inside the Earth. Once again, I wonder how deep you have to drill to get it.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
we've only drilled like 10 kilometers down anywhere.
Well,
And yeah,
I know that U.S. and Russia were digging holes, and Russia lasted for about 20 years before they finally gave up.
yeah. I remember when I was a kid, they talked about drilling through the mantle, and it's a really big project. And I don't think they got all the way through the mantle even.
No, they didn't.
It
And
turned
let
out
me
to be a
just
whole lot
do,
harder than people thought to drill a really significant distance down.
yeah. So I'm just looking real close or quickly here. The deepest human man-made hole is Kola, super deep borehole.
Yeah,
It's in Russia. It got to 12,000 meters, which is,
12
oh,
kilometers. Yeah,
about, yeah, or meters.
yeah, 12 kilometers then.
Oh, yeah, 12 kilometers, sorry,
Yep, that's
which
it.
is about 7 miles.
Yep, yep.
Over 7 miles.
Yep, which is not enough to reach anything that isn't pretty close to the surface.
Yeah, so they began in 1970.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the point of that was, but
Well, here's an idea for you.
yes,
Satya Nadella has explained, CEO of Microsoft, that he loves podcasts, but he doesn't listen to them anymore. Instead, he uploads the transcripts to Copilot, and then he talks to Copilot about the content during his drive to the office.
I see.
So that's a new way to enjoy podcasts. Plus, it'll invent things that aren't there. You didn't mention that part, but now when you ask it, what did they say on that podcast? It'll just make up stupid stuff. Anyway, and now here's a guy he decided, I guess, to make his own power wall. Since 2016, he's been collecting laptop batteries until he has 650 of them. He took them apart and mounted the cells in custom racks. Now he has 24 solar panels, each with a capacity of 440 watts and a customized rack of cells. And he says it's working fine. They don't swell, they don't catch on fire or anything, and they totally provide plenty of power. So that's an option, I guess. And then there was the first custom CRISPR therapy. This is really from science fiction. They had an infant born with some kind of disease that was going to kill them within 5 days. And they designed custom therapy based on his DNA to repair the missing DNA he needed so he could make the enzymes he needed, and it worked. And so they say in a couple of generations, gene editing therapies will become the standard of care for many diseases, just as routine as antibiotics or blood pressure medication. So that's pretty awesome.
So is this something that, let me think about this. So we're editing the genes, so it's not a permanent fix, is that?
It is apparently a permanent fix.
So it's a one-time treatment.
It took 3 infusions
Yeah,
over the
okay,
course of several
okay.
days, and
Yeah,
apparently he had two genetic flaws, and they fixed one of them. So he's not completely healthy, but it alleviated most of the problems. So instead of living a greatly restricted life with huge interventions, he's going to just have to take, relatively innocent things like taking some kind of medicine.
okay.
So they greatly improved his condition, and they required making a custom drug just for his genome.
Yeah, right, right.
I'm expecting this forever. Like, it's like 23andMe. They say it'll, in the future, they would start by taking your sequence before deciding how to treat your illnesses, have a custom illness for each person or custom treatment
Yeah.
for each person. It does make sense. All right.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Huh.
Yeah. I
So
got,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, if you catch that early on,
Yeah. And apparently you had to
um,
catch this early on. Apparently it'll kill you within 5 days if they don't treat it. So
yeah. And so was the child born?
yeah, the child was born, and somehow they detected this disease. He had like a breathing problems or something, and they
Okay.
detected it. It's a known defect that requires outrageous treatment, and they tried this super experimental new treatment. He's the first person to ever receive this kind of custom gene treatment, and it appears to have worked.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so you remember the Signal app used by Pete Hegseth and the other members of his cabinet, the
Right.
data leaked. Well, when they first released this information, they didn't release the details of how the hack worked. But now that they've taken that thing offline, that thing no longer runs. They blocked it. Now they exposed all the information. So this guy explained how he got in 20 minutes. Now I thought it was probably just an open Amazon S3 bucket. What else could it be that gets you all the data in 20 minutes? But this is what it is. He looked at the admin panel, secure.telemessage.com, and he noticed that they were hashing passwords to MD5 on the client side, which completely negates the security benefit as you can just replay the hash. And so he said, well, these guys are complete idiots. Then he found they were using JSP, Java Server Pages, which apparently have been out of style for more than 10 years and are notoriously insecure. So he ran a enumeration tool. He used
Okay.
Ferox. The one I knew was Derby and Durbuster, but there's a newer one called Ferox Buster, written in Rust, which just searches your site to find pages. And he found publicly available resources on secure telemessage. And then he tried archive.telemessage.com and he found a vulnerable URL which ended in /heapdump. And for diagnostic purposes, you could just load the heap dump URL and it would give you the most recent 150 megabytes of heap memory. So this
Okay.
amounts to the same thing as the SSL flaw, the heartbleed flaw. So he's just getting a block of memory, and in that memory is recently used credentials and plain text logs. You get logins that work, and you get the plain text chat logs. So I can read Coinbase internal chats. This is incredible.
Huh.
So everything being sent through Signal encrypted was being sent in plain text and archived in plain text and available to the world in heap dumps. So that's how he did it. And there's distributed denial of secrets has now posted thousands of these dumps for people to see, although they aren't just letting anybody download them. You have to convince them you're a journalist or a researcher, and then you can download the dumps they archived from May 4, 2025.
I see. I
So,
see.
so that's pretty good. It's like Heartbleed. Now we know how it happened.
Yeah. So, Sam, I did some investigation on the claim that solar inverters
Yeah,
have,
unauthorized communication hardware.
yeah, hold on. I'm going to sneeze for a second.
Yeah. All right.
And it turns out that there's sources that are unidentified
Yep.
who have unidentified the Chinese hardware. And so it's a lot of unidentified, unspecified, and somehow this made it into a news story.
It's Reuters. That's why I paid attention. I mean,
Yeah,
you would think Reuters would have like journalistic standards to uphold. So that's why I thought maybe there's something real here. It reminds me of Bloomberg. Remember, 15 years ago, Bloomberg claimed that iPhones had unauthorized communication chips in them were stealing all our data, and they never
yeah,
backed down either. When everybody, like Apple and everybody, said, no, this is not true, they said, well, we'll investigate. And then they just never investigated, never retracted or anything.
yeah. Got it, got it. Who else is doing? Somebody else was. Oh, the TikTok, right?
What about TikTok?
TikTok, right? Wasn't TikTok is supposed to be subversive and
Well, just like Huawei,
yeah, a
TikTok,
Huawei. That's
just
the other
because they're
one.
a Chinese company, we say, well, maybe they would steal our data or do something bad. And so we ban them without them actually doing anything. And they claim, hey, we didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Just because they're
right.
from China, we said, well, they're no good. It's a little more than bigotry, really.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Trump is going to sign a law forcing platforms to remove revenge porn within 48 hours. And people are complaining. Now, they're proud of the fact they say this is fast and this will help protect victims. Some people are saying the 48-hour timeline is too short, so that platforms will be rushed and just censor a bunch of broad content. Other people say it's too long, giving people enough time to download and redistribute the content. So, like every form of content moderation, there's no pleasing people.
Yes. Yeah.
So, at least you could make the argument that here is Trump doing something effective and good that nobody else had the guts to do. That's a reasonable position, I would think. Everybody else just in America just doesn't regulate the internet at all because it's too much bother. Trump is the one that's willing to like make enemies and he doesn't care. So, uh, and then there's a new way to disable Microsoft Defender, which is pretty good. Um,
Yeah,
as you know, if you install another antivirus product like McAfee, it will turn off Defender. Say, okay,
right.
so you just send it the signal claiming that there's another antivirus installed when there isn't. And now, normally you can only install a known signed antivirus tool. So to avoid that, you inject your DIL into Task Manager, which is signed by Microsoft and trusted, and now it can trip that flag. So that's a pretty clever trick.
Yeah, yeah, it is a good one.
Yeah, and I wonder if the Microsoft can find a way to mitigate it. Maybe they will.
Well, it was a simple fix, sounds like.
Yeah, well, remember Newark Airport had big trouble, like 8 times their communications went down for like 90 seconds to where a lot of air traffic controllers resigned from the stress, and now they don't have enough air traffic controllers at all. So they've actually lowered the number of flights allowed to fly there to try to make it safer. And the Washington airport, I think Ronald Reagan
Okay.
had like 2 fatal crashes we talked about a month or two ago because it's just so crowded. The corridor there is so crowded that helicopters and everything keep getting in the way. And then the
Wait, it Reagan?
at the Washington airport, which I
Oh,
maybe it's not Reagan. I'm not sure the name of it. I know there was a helicopter that crashed into uh, commercial flight.
yeah.
They,
So
they, yeah.
that is not due to controller error.
No, that's due to just too much traffic. That
Well,
one was due to the training. The helicopter training pilot went too high. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but the it was actually the airline or the air traffic laws, if you will, the spacing. And it was just a dangerous situation by design
Yeah. The articles I
that
read
should
said
have
that
been,
the,
yeah, it should have been mitigated years ago.
yeah, what I've read is that lawmakers keep demanding that they can get flights to Washington, and that pressure causes them to have too many flights, more than they can really handle going in and out of there.
No, what it really is let's talk about trains,
Yeah.
right? Where you have trains going across a highway and you've got too much passenger traffic, meaning car traffic with train traffic,
Yep.
and they just get too close to each other because they're trying to sequence them. What they should have done was hold up the helicopter traffic, made it wait until the passenger plane got through. But they're talking about 100 feet of clearance between each aircraft, which is just not enough. And but
Right. But doesn't that
yeah.
amount to what I said that they really have to handle less total flights a day in order to make more room between them?
Well, but the helicopter traffic is more optional and they could have taken other paths or
Well,
they could have been redirected.
okay.
You know,
Fair
they
enough.
got a radar screen. They can see both aircraft on the screen.
Okay.
The helicopter can hover in place for, a minute while the plane passes through.
All right. Well, anyway, the reason I
So,
bring it up is
yeah,
that there's another one.
okay.
The same kind of communication outage just happened at Denver for a minute and a half because
Um,
both transmitters that cover a segment of airspace went down. So,
what?
yeah, there are two transmitters. They both went down. So they had to switch to some alternate communication system that apparently worked in this case, although it did
Ah,
not work at Newark. So, people are saying it's pretty, it, people are getting to feel like it's probably not very safe to fly anymore. I don't know. Um, it certainly is more than just one airport with trouble lately.
yeah, but I think we're connecting a lot of unrelated events
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's why I want to.
Um,
Well, I got a few AI stories.
all
Uh,
right.
OpenAI has now finally released their agent made just for coding called Codex. And I've been waiting for this, thinking that small AIs focused to just one purpose would be cheaper and better. But Codex here allows experienced developers to delegate rote and relatively simple programming tasks to an AI agent that will generate production-ready code and show its work along the way so you can audit it, but it can take anywhere from 1 to 30 minutes to complete the task. So this is, an attempt to make an agent that would actually be trustworthy enough to use. We'll see. It's still in like some kind of pre-release beta testing, so you can't really
Okay.
try it out yet. But um, another one is GPT-o3, and this is their new revolutionary model that can do so-called reasoning, solving complex multi-step problems and navigating nuanced logic. They say it's by far the best of the new reasoning AI models, with one minor defect. Running one advanced query can cost more than $1,500. And for comparison, earlier models like GPT 0.1 Mini can do a query for 20 cents. So that's kind of a big difference. And Microsoft found out they can't get people to pay even 20 bucks a month for Copilot. So I don't know how they're going to get anybody to pay for something that costs $1,500 per query, which is kind of why I think the whole American model of just hitting everything with a bigger and bigger hammer until you make a $400 billion data center doesn't make any damn sense, because there's nothing you can sell the end user where they're going to pay a lot. And you'd really have to have a killer app with millions of people paying a high price to pay for that. And they don't have it. I mean, Anyway, I use the free AI. Google search goes to AI mode now, and I use that a lot. That's pretty nice, but I'm not paying anything for it.
Yeah.
I'm not even
Yeah.
paying 10 bucks a month. And I think they're losing money on every query by a lot. So it's all a temporary lost leader, assuming that soon there'll be some awesome thing that we'll cheerfully pay a lot of money for. But that doesn't seem to be happening. And Apple AI is way behind schedule and just being delayed because Apple can't really find anything to do with it that is really great.
Sam, I wonder, I'm just asking here. I wonder if the class action lawsuits against Apple are going to start, because these were all promises
Well, yes. Yeah,
that was an incentive to buy a new piece of hardware.
you're right. You're right. It's like Microsoft's Windows Vista Ultimate Advantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, yeah, you're right. That could happen. That's why Apple kind of is under some pressure to push something out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Interesting.
another
Because,
consequence. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Huh.
Another consequence I just discovered is that Stack Overflow is essentially dead. They printed the number of new questions per day, and it's fallen to essentially zero. Apparently, the large language models have replaced Stack Overflow. To be fair, I've used Stack Overflow for years, but I never posted a single question. I would just search. I never asked a forum for help with anything. I would search and find that somebody else asked the question I need. But there were people posting questions and getting answers there, and apparently there aren't anymore, because you can just get your answer from an AI, and it's faster and easier. So
Hmm.
that's probably these online forums where you post your technical problem and get an answer are probably been obsoleted by large language models, which may be one of the more successful actual applications of them. And that makes sense
Yeah.
because I'm noticing Google's AI is much better than it was even a month ago. Now it's good enough that I look at the AI first and it's usually right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd have to agree with you on that one.
And that's new. Even a month ago, the AI didn't come on most of the time. And when it did, it was wrong and I didn't care.
Right.
They've
Right.
improved it a lot. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Huh.
yeah,
Well, they're improving. Ha 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 ha.
yeah, they are. I went to KakalakiCon in North Carolina, and there was a talk there that was very interesting about supply chain attacks. This guy analyzed a bunch of them and talked about the ways you can search for those commits and find them. So it was very interesting. And I saw another one just came out. Node
Yeah.
Package Manager was the main place they go, although they also go to GitHub and other online repositories. That's why he said, at my company, we never use open source software. That's the risk. The open source has a bunch of maintainers, and somebody can just steal the maintainers' credentials and get in, and it keeps happening. So he says, we post open source software, but if we want to use it, we reroute it ourselves. And anyway,
Yeah.
this package called OS Info Checker ES6 uses invisible Unicode characters to hide malicious code. There apparently are Unicode characters that do not print anything. They're like modifiers to change the character after them, and you can put hundreds or thousands of them in a row, and they don't affect the visible text at all. So you can use it as a form of steganography. You can hide information in there, and that's what it does.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It's so that's what they're doing. And the last one I got here I thought was pretty fun. France has invented the laser rifle. They've got it. The power source fits in a backpack. You can walk around with it, and the gun shoots a laser beam powerful enough to melt electronics at 500 meters. So they think you could probably disable a drone with this. They say it's sufficiently powerful to blind drone optics or melt plastic protective filters. So it's sort of the phaser.
Yeah, hmm.
And they say that the spot that it heats up is 2 centimeters across at 500 meters.
Yeah. So, Sam, you have some background with lasers, don't
Yeah.
you?
Oh, yeah.
So, if you're, so here, let's go to an extreme example. If there's fog, the laser's not going to work, is it?
Well, it would depend on the wavelength. It's probably an infrared laser. And so I don't
Yeah.
know, but you're probably right. I'd say fog and smoke would probably shorten the range. And
Yeah.
the main thing is it'll spread out. They've somehow
Right.
got it focusing well enough that it has a pretty tight beam at 500 meters. So yeah, the main problem with lasers though has always been their incredible inefficiency. They turn less than 1% of the input power into light in most cases, although pulsed lasers can have higher efficiency. So I would assume it's pulsed. Um,
Yeah. But then,
continuous continuous
yeah.
wave lasers are extremely inefficient. Only a tiny fraction of the power expended turns into laser light.
What type?
Continuous ones,
Continue.
like
Yeah.
those red
Okay.
dot ones. I mean, if they feed in 1 watt and they put out like a few milliwatts. So
I see. So,
you but a
like
pulse
the,
laser, I've heard they
yeah.
can get up to like 50 or 80% efficiency.
Hmm.
So I would
But then,
assume this is actually
y-
pulsed, but I don't know.
yeah, but then there's got to be an element of time where you have to be hitting the same spot. And I just can't see that with a handheld device.
Well, I know how pulse lasers work. I used to build them. Pulse
Yeah,
lasers work by having a uh, xenon flash lamp, which makes a
yeah,
flash that's a few milliseconds long, and that pumps up the lasing energy, and then you trigger it all at once. And out comes one pulse of light. So, I mean, you can
yeah.
store the energy in the lasing material like a battery for a while. You pump it into an excited state, then you send a trigger pulse, and all the laser imitates the trigger pulse, and you get a coherent beam coming out.
Yeah. So could we call that a bullet, if you will, of
Sure.
laser
That's
light?
right. Yeah, you
Okay.
essentially make a bullet of light. Yeah.
Yeah. So and you've got a drone as you used in your example that's going to be moving.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Targeting a drone with a handheld thing
Yeah,
sounds like the
yeah.
targeting would be a problem.
And it seems to me that you'd have to have that dot right in the same spot because if the drone's moving around,
Well,
then
that's where it
yes.
would depend on whether it's a continuous beam or a pulse.
Yeah, yeah.
If it was a single pulse, then that wouldn't be a problem. It'd be just like a bullet.
Hmm. And you think it could blast through piece of
Well, the
plastic?
one we had was based on military ones they've used for decades, and it would blow the paint off a magazine. But the lasers I knew worked on having a neodymium glass stage and then more stages to amplify it. And so they could actually like shoot tanks with it and stuff, but the end result was the thing weighed tons and was huge. You have to
Yeah,
have these
yeah,
huge
yeah.
things to amplify it. Ours didn't have any amplifier, so it was only a total of half a joule. And so it would like burn a spot in like a magazine cover like a cigarette might.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It's
that's kind of
essentially a
what I'm
bullet.
getting at. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think either of us know for sure. We don't know what the power of this is, but
that's right. But I mean, the
yeah.
surprising thing about this is they've somehow made it small and portable. The stuff I had was, hundreds of
Ref
pounds and 20 feet
refrigerator
across.
size.
Yeah, and the ones that actually shoot down planes are like huge. They have to mount them on like a semi truck or something,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which is what you would
yeah,
think. And the amount of power is outrageous. So, getting down to something portable, just a matter of modern miniaturization. I would imagine it's a solid state laser, but I don't really know.
yeah.
I mean, they've
Well,
had CO2 lasers for a long time that are very powerful, but they're very
right.
big.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They use them
Huh.
in like those fusion ignition facilities and stuff.
Oh, is that what they're using at NIF
Uh,
at
some
Lawrence
of,
Livermore?
I'm not sure. There's like several designs, but some of them
Yeah,
do use lasers. I think CO2 lasers. I'm not quite sure.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
one. CO2 lasers are the most efficient at making really a lot of light in the infrared.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, those are all the stories I had. Have you got any?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
I did catch a little story, but I haven't been able to verify this, that apparently Portland schools plans on installing cameras literally everywhere so they can monitor students
Well, I
at their
don't.
schools.
Well, I think there'd be a lot of problems in America. I know in Japan, apparently, the little kids all wear like RFID tags and they have detectors on all the doors. And in Japan, this is totally accepted because people are very, very concerned to make sure their kid is not leaving unauthorized and getting in trouble. But they
Hmm.
tried doing that in like Los Angeles, and the parents freaked out because they didn't get parental permission first. So if you're going to do that in America, you really have to make sure the parents have opted in.
So they actually tried this?
They tried it, and the parents all complained, saying, "How dare you
Wow.
track my child? My child should have freedom or something." And they learned their lesson. If you're going to do it in America, you got to make sure the parents are okay with it first,
Yeah, got it.
because it just was
Got
part of our culture. People expect freedom, and apparently in Japan it's not that way. Apparently everyone accepts that you need to know where your little kids are every minute of the day, and that's not an intrusion or anything. Just a cultural thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it there is quite a lot of cultural difference between US and Japan.
I know in public spaces, it's the opposite. In America, we have these cars driving everywhere, taking pictures of everything, putting them on the web. And when they tried that in Japan, they immediately threw them out. Google them around. They say, this is terrible. You can't have a picture of someone standing on the street smoking or going into a bar or a brothel. That's an invasion of their privacy. We will not tolerate this.
Okay.
So, it's just every culture has their own standards of like what's a private space and what's an intrusion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
On that line, since we talked a little bit about schools, it's interesting. In Germany, there are no private schools. Everyone goes to the same public school.
That sounds like Germany. Yeah.
And the curriculum is overseen so everybody learns the same thing, which sort of, not quite, but eliminates a lot of the conspiracy theories.
Well, I guess it would. It would be like the so-called good old days when there were only three television channels like Walter Cronkite, and we all pretty much agreed about the facts of things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when I used to work at a medical center in San Francisco, and one day I fainted because they showed these gruesome pictures of surgery, and they were all eye surgeons, and they thought it was fine, but I'd never seen that, so I fainted. And what's funny is the guy said the room was full of surgeons. A grad student was there from Germany. He said all the surgeons made helpless faces, but I knew what to do because in Germany, everybody who gets a driver's license has to learn first aid and CPR. So everybody knows what to do if somebody has a medical problem.
Yeah.
It's part of
So,
that uniform education.
New York schools needed teachers several years back, about a decade back.
Mhm.
So they recruited from Germany and Austria. And when they brought them over here, right, they paid New York schools, paid for them to come over to the US. And they told them, now you have to get a driver's license and you need to study to take the exam. And they said, but we've already taken it. And you're right. In Germany, you have to have first aid. You also have to demonstrate that you can change a tire
Right. It makes
and
so much
so,
sense.
several other things.
Yeah. Which really good. That's why I always was horrified. Like, how could the Germans ever have been Nazis? They seem like such a sensible culture. And, before Trump, I thought it could never happen here. We're totally different. No, I've gotten over that,
Yeah, listen, Sam, I don't think so. Remember, a lot of Germany's ideas came from the US.
including the anti-Semitism. They got it from Henry
Yes.
Ford. So,
Well, not Henry Ford, but yeah, Henry Ford and others.
right. But anyway, that's why. And now it has happened here. We have have a Nazi administration running our country now. So
Yeah,
it's, I've completely changed my opinion on these matters. My concept of American superiority has been pretty much destroyed.
yeah, and the whole eugenics movement, that Germany got that from the US. We were the leaders.
And we're back to it now. Elon Musk with his white
Yeah,
African stuff, everything. He's totally into eugenics. That's why he has like 14 kids that we know of and probably a lot more. He's convinced his genes are superior and he's saving the human race by spreading his genes. And he hasn't publicly come out and said we need to sterilize the inferior people, but he has said that he's very, very afraid that that's going to happen. The stupid people are breeding, and everyone should watch this movie called Idiocracy that starts with exactly this issue. The stupid people have kids and the smart people don't. He said that's destroying the world. The most important problem, more important than climate change or anything, is that smart people need to have more kids. He really is convinced the human race is going to burn out in a few generations because the stupid people will breed, which is straight up eugenics.
yeah,
I'd say he
yeah,
never taught at a community college. This would get you over this nonsense. At a community college, you meet the disadvantaged people and you find out they're just as smart as anybody else.
yeah, yeah. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, that's why, that's a politically popular statement on the left, but I think the experimental evidence is definitely in. That's why I remember I thought about this when I was young. Like we did well in school, and then I didn't have any kids, and I said, in the old days they would say you're failing in your duty to the race, but I don't think there's any such thing. The other people are having kids, and all the kids are fine. All the kids are just as good as the kids from
Yeah,
more accomplished parents.
yeah, and depending on how you look at this, we have some very smart people
Yeah.
who are criminals
Oh yeah.
or mass murderers
Oh, and psychopaths and
and
everything.
psychopaths.
I
Yeah,
know. And
yeah,
I think intelligence is not just one thing. That's another huge mistake. It's not
yeah,
like there's one number IQ which determines your total value as a human. Like I was just talking to people at Kakalaki, we were talking about classes, and I said, one of my advantages as a teacher is that I'm not very smart. The people that are too smart, they don't understand where the students get stuck. I get stuck too on the easy things. I remember how hard this is. So, you can't be too far ahead of the students
right.
or
Yeah,
you don't reach them. So I'm not that
yeah,
different
yeah,
than them,
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
it's
That's why college professors don't teach kindergarten or preschool or elementary school kids
well, I
because
don't I don't think I'd have any ability to do it. I know.
right. I know it's a different mindset, and you have to talk at a different level and be able to relate to your audience.
Yeah, I was until about a year ago, I wasn't even willing to give cybersecurity presentations to non-technical audiences. I say I have no idea what to tell them. But since I started doing corporate consulting, I found out nobody cares about my opinion. They want me to back it up with like official NIST recommendations. And there are official NIST and CISA recommendations for small business. And I based it on that. Now I know what to say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But until then, I was stuck. I said, I wouldn't know what to say to a non-technical audience. I can't think like them. I don't know what their concerns are. They'll
exactly.
ask me like,
Right.
what's the best antivirus or something? And I don't have any useful information to give you about that. But
Yeah,
now I do. Now I know like the top four things you should do. Here's the recommendation. And I needed some guidance. Anyway,
got it.
yeah.
Got it. All
Anyway,
right, Sam, that's it for me. We want to wrap and we
yeah,
meet again on Friday, right?
that's right. Friday.
Friday it is.